The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I am joined this week by two fine co-hosts,
Nate Heininger
and Shane Kelly.
And this week we are talking about Titan Station. Titan Station is a game that's been on my radar ever since it was brought to our attention by its developer, who, as it happens, is one of our patrons. This is not the first time that we've covered a game on the show that a patron developed. But it was sort of unique because this guy was on our Patreon for a while and then said, "Hi, hey, I've got a game and I think it might be up your alley," and it was definitely the kind of thing that is up our alley. Titan Station is a first-person adventure sort of
Oxford
narrative
English
game.
Dictionary defines payola as practice of bribing someone to use their influence or position to promote a particular product or interest.
And that's right. The Short Game is for sale. So,
right.
Listen, we have to preface things here. We for sure do.
Journalistic integrity, of course.
Look, we're not out here. We're not the Washington Post or whatever. Okay,
No, this is about community. We have a cool community.
We do.
And that community also produces cool things, which I enjoy.
And you too can pay us $1 a month, and we will play your game. And that does not guarantee we will do an episode on it. All right, it does not guarantee we will do an episode on it. But when it is as down the middle, bowling a strike as a game like Titan Station is in terms of the kinds of game that we cover on the show, sure, man. Like, this is let me pitch what Titan Station is. And you will see why we are talking about it. Titan Station is a first-person narrative adventure game in the sort of walking simulator space. So I would say this is a very brief pitch for this is, Firewitch. That's a good title, actually. I'll save that one for something later. Firewatch on a space station. And it has an incredible retro tech, sort of retro future aesthetic. So I was immediately drawn in and interested in playing this. So
the vibes are pristine.
The vibes are incredible with this. Like, you
the
just watch
space station itself, not pristine.
No, no, but like the look of the space station is incredible. So if you watch a trailer for this, you'll immediately know what I'm talking about. This is it's a sort of walking simulator that takes place on a space station suspended above Titan, the moon of Jupiter. I'm right about that, right? I'm not embarrassing myself by saying it's a moon of Jupiter. Is that what it is?
I think so. Now, you said that, and I thought you were right. And then now that you're questioning it, now I don't know. There's a lot going on.
I just realized that I was potentially embarrassing myself.
Titan is the largest moon of Saturn.
Saturn! Okay. Oh my God, I did screw it up.
I was going to say Saturn, right? But then because you can look out the window and you can see Saturn and the rings, and it's really
God.
Nice.
I've just totally shown myself as a complete fell asleep in sixth grade.
You don't know all the
class.
moons. You don't know the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Nerd.
I have to turn in my science fiction fan card now, man. Yeah. Arthur C. Clarke is spinning in his grave.
How many moons of Saturn can you name, Raygan? Can you name any? Can you tell me how many moons Saturn has?
7.
We have been trying to open the show with more discussion topics, so we're turning this into a middle school.
Okay, Nate, I'm gonna since I have looked it up, I'm gonna ask you to also guess how many moons of Saturn there are.
Shane, we're riffing on Raygan right now, so
I'll tell you who gets closest.
Okay,
how many, Nate? It's not fair if I'm the only one.
6.
Raygan, you're closest. The answer is 83.
Jesus Christ. Shit.
That's no moon. Those aren't moons.
Okay, can I name any of them? Can we name any of them? Nate, name a moon of Saturn other than Titan, because apparently we all
damn it. Europa.
Shit, that was the
that
only
is
one
a
I
moon
know
of
too.
Jupiter.
That's Jupiter. Yeah. No, I
God
know.
damn it.
Okay. Which is larger, Titan or the planet Mercury?
I'm gonna go with
Titan.
Mercury.
It is
Titan.
Titan.
Mercury is. I know Mercury is tiny.
Okay.
It's also called Titan. I have to assume it's big.
Yeah, it is
Fair enough.
He big.
Oh,
All right, let's
God.
stop. Let's we could stop orbital body chat. I think
I
we
have been thoroughly humbled in front of our entire audience. So
Mhm.
now that my credibility is fully shredded, you can listen to some more of my opinions.
You have to take my route, which just have no credibility to begin with, so you
Mhm,
can't lose
absolutely.
it whenever you get grilled on the amount of moons there are.
Mm. You know what? I'm glad this happened. I'm glad that I didn't just say that it was a moon of Saturn or Jupiter or whichever I said earlier, and now I don't even remember. And I'm glad that this didn't go completely uncommented on, and that someone took me to task.
I want to give a big shout out to Wikipedia because that really helped me seem smart instead of stupid like you dummies.
Really clutch. Thanks, Wikipedia. Where was I? We were talking about a video game.
Yeah, we were talking about payola.
Right. Yeah. Payola. Webster's no. So the developer Joakim Larsen, a Swede apparently. I've only really talked to him on the Discord very briefly. He seems like a really nice guy, but basically he dropped in to say, hey, like the show. And he'd been supporting it for a little while. And when his game came out, he dropped some codes at us. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. I'll get to that soon. And then months go by and months go by and months go by. This came out in November, guys, I think. And here we are finally getting to it. I have a baby. That's my excuse. I had a 2-month-old when this came out. Or less, actually. So I have an excuse for why I didn't get to this when it came out. What's you guys' excuse?
Raygan had a baby. That's my excuse.
That's a good excuse.
My excuse is you usually pick the games I play.
Fair enough. But I was excited to check this out. And I'll say that the thing that really stands out about this game, Joakim Larsen apparently is primarily a 3D artist by trade. He has apparently a pretty long history in AAA as a 3D artist, creating assets for games and working in large teams and whatnot. But as far as I can tell, this is his first solo project, and he really went at it. Like, this is a really impressive game to be developed by a single person in terms of its tech and environments. Titan Station, it's built in, I believe it's the Unreal Engine, and it is a fully 3D first-person game with photorealistic textures and everything. It's using all the modern tech. This is a game that, like, I played this on my gaming PC. I have a 3070 graphics card, so a decent, relatively modern mid-range, graphics card. And this made it go burr and really, really used it to the extreme with ray tracing support and DLSS 3 or 2 rather. I don't remember the difference. Whichever one my graphics card supports is the one that it does. And looks and plays incredibly for one of these. It's extremely photorealistic.
Mm-hmm. It's worth saying, like, our show, you don't get a lot of graphics talk. We are kind of techies about it, not like overly invested. Most of the games we play are like the happy story of a square meeting a rectangle, and so we don't get to play stuff that looks this good very often. And Titan Station, honestly, like, there was a moment where, like, I had just kind of gotten started in the game and I was like looking out the window at the planet as you do, and like I was like, holy shit, you can see like fingerprints and smudges on this window. Like, the level of detail.
It's weird to say that the thing that impressed me the most about this game
is the little details.
Sorry to like damn it with faint praise perhaps here, because I'm gonna say the most impressive thing was the reflections in the linoleum. They're really impressive. The linoleum looks exactly right.
Some good looking linoleum.
It's incredible looking linoleum.
I knew Raygan was going to love this when I went into the first like living pod, and the entire room is centered around a cathode ray tube television.
Yes, and a conversation pit. So we haven't talked about
a conversation
Well,
pit.
so that's what I wanted to mention, because yes, this game is beautiful. I played it on the Steam Deck, which obviously does not have quite the processing power that maybe you guys were playing it on, but it still looked really nice on the Steam Deck. And so I was impressed by the quality, especially when you know that one person put this together. But what really stood out to me as far as the design goes, and I think my favorite part of the game too, is that not just that it looks good. I really liked the aesthetic and the design choices that were made. I guess like it's a very nuts and bolts futuristic game. It's supposed to set in 1999, which is always funny when
very funny
when games do this. But it's a very like, it's like Star Wars versus Star Trek when you're talking about technology, right? Like Star Wars, everything is gritty, falling apart, and Star Trek, everything is like glitzy and glammy, right? This is more of the Star Wars where everything is very like tactile and based off of technology that we might recognize today. The thing that really stood out to me is like a good example of this is you're dealing with a lot of passwords in this game, and a lot of doors and a lot of codes and a lot of getting through.
Yes, we'll
codes.
talk about that.
and someone who's real life deals a lot with cybersecurity and stuff. The password hygiene in this game was driving me crazy. But anyway,
really bad.
You have a door code or a door key that you use to get through, and it's like this big chunky like Nintendo 64 style cartridge that you just like stick into the door and then input some things on the code and pull it out. And it just feels really tactile, and I really like that design. And you can hold items and you can look at it, and there's details on these key cards of like where it should be dusted and what glass needs to be kept clean for it to work on the doors. Like little details like that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, you definitely can see that this is something that like came from a talented 3D artist who's used to making detailed in-game objects. To kind of explain the aesthetic a little bit further, like this is, so the premise of the game, this is the far future 1999, in a timeline where the space race started in the 60s and went so hard and never stopped that we have ships darting around the solar system, stopping at places like Titan for refueling, in the far future year of 1999. And Titan Station is essentially a space station gas station that hovers above the moon, Titan, and refuels ships. And it's kind of a shit job. But you're way out there, and the place has the look and feel of a place that was built in the 70s and has slowly degraded into the 90s. So some of the rooms look nicer than others. You have rooms where it looks nice and modern. They have colorful, almost shag looking patterned carpeting on the walls, things like the executive areas. The hallways are like dim and not all of the lights work. And there's like weird cables snaking across the floor. The living quarters have this very 70s conversation pit vibe where you've got this lots of burnt orange and avocado green colors in the decor. It just looks really cool and weird in a 70s sci-fi kind of way. And probably the touch point in terms of the visuals, at least for me, was primarily the Alien franchise, especially the first movie, because Alien is that's my go-to imagery for slightly dingy 70s futurism. The shit future that was envisioned in the 70s. And that's kind of the vibe this is going for here.
There's a designer who died a couple of years ago, sadly. His name was Ron Cobb, and he was the designer of the Nostromo for Alien. Mm-hmm. And he also designed the time machine for Back to the Future.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Nice.
And and like his look, and even he also worked on Star Wars. I think he designed the cantina for Star Wars. So
Nice.
his fingerprints are literally on the windows of this spaceship.
Yeah, the aliens is a good or alien is a good touch point. I felt that in this game. Maybe it was subconsciously from the design, because I was also feeling it kind of in the sense of dread that is lingering through this whole game too, and the sound design as well was giving me an alien vibe.
Shane, do you know if he was the same person who designed the semiotic standard icons that were used in the Alien movie? Was he the same one who did that?
I am not sure about that. I don't know exactly what. I think he did the ship. I don't know if that was the same person or not.
I don't know. I'll try.
Had to have been a team.
Yeah, I'm sure. I always thought that was like a really interesting little like design footnote. The set designer, whoever it was, one of the people.
Yeah, no, it says Ron Cobb. That was Ron Cobb. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, did a series of like very cool looking simplified iconography for the spaceship.
I remember these. I've seen
Alien.
this before. They've got like icons for things like artificial gravity area or no pressure suit required that are just like little icons of a guy in a spacesuit floating off, and they bring the entire vibe of like men pee here, women pee here, to concepts like laser warning.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. It's like these are like the bathroom signs for a world in which getting vaporized in a vacuum is as mundane as which bathroom do I use.
Which, and then Portal is riffing on with all of their...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, these have been extremely influential, and you know, designers like even today still look to them, even though they were just sort of a weird thing that, you know, this guy created in order to have something to stick on the details, tiny details you'd never even notice in the background of the movie Alien, which is I love the sort of story and design of these, but like I definitely thought about these as I was looking around in Titan
I think there
Station.
might even be like a direct line from these to app icons on the home screen of an iPhone, because they're that same rounded rectangle look, and I don't know if I saw that a ton in signage.
Yeah, if you look around
when I was
Titan
alive
Station,
in the 70s, which obviously I was. No, never mind. But I mean, that's pure speculation. I'm going to eat a pretzel.
Yeah. Don't eat pretzels, Shane. This is a podcast. My God, man, what are you doing? They don't like explicitly use those icons in this, although they would feel right at home in Titan Station.
Yeah.
But you can tell that Joakim Larsen has given some thought to the iconography use. Like there's no in-game map. There are maps on the walls telling you, you know, how to find your way around, and they have iconography on them that wouldn't have been totally out of place on the Nostromo. It's got that vibe, and I think it just visually on every level, this is a game that has given a lot of thought to this particular aesthetic. This is not a brand new aesthetic. Even, you know, games relatively recently, things like the Alien Isolation game has kind of taken a run at this vibe, but this is an incredible, like well realized version of this aesthetic, especially considering that this is from a indie team of one dude.
If you told me this was a full team developed this game, I'd still say great job.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know. So you mentioned like it can feel like, you know, faint praise for the overall game to say this is the best part of the game, but I think we say that just to fully highlight how like this really is something unique and worth walking around in, and I think does you know, if a walking simulator sounds like a boring concept for you, you know, it's
like I would walk around this space station for a few hours, plot or no plot. It's,
exactly. It's just nice. It's cool to walk around in a 3D space.
I will say, the look, you know, it's not weird that the look of games in this genre, which, you know, we kind of jokingly call walking simulator, but really is, you know, I think that the nice name, which if I were making one of these, I would probably call it an environmental narrative game. But
or 3D adventure game. I think, you know,
why not?
We talk about point and click games. This is a 3D point and click game.
Yeah, it is a subgenre of the adventure game. And
I always say first person narrative exploration game, which is probably too wordy, but feels like that's what I say when I talk about these
I
games.
like first person narrative environmental exploration vania.
Perhaps I would say let's take the Vania off of that, because this is an extremely linear game. So
well, I don't know. Narrative. There's a door that you see at the beginning that you can't get into till you get a key later. So
that's a Metroidvania. You're right.
That's a Metroidvania.
One locked door, and it's a Metroidvania.
And also, I didn't realize that you could run until about halfway through playing it.
Oh, that's too bad.
And so it's kind of like
that would slowed you down.
Oh my god, yeah, it's kind of like a Metroidvania for my personal experience, though, because I gained the ability to run about halfway through, which
what an upgrade.
which made traversing the world a lot easier.
When you
what I'm trying to say about
this really opens up.
What I'm trying to say about this genre is that lots of video games kind of want to be carried by their graphics, but games in this genre are substantially scenery porn. Like, and having really good design and really good graphics pays off in a game like this more so than it does in like a game that's much more gameplay focused, because you really are wanting to have having something cool to look at is important in a game where you're doing, essentially just walking around and entering passwords and having a story.
You're spending time in the environment, right? Otherwise, most action oriented games, you're burning through environments, right? So if it looks good, it's great. But
all that said, we are 20 minutes in and we haven't really talked much about the story, and this is a narrative game. And also we haven't talked much about any of the mechanics. Now, this is being a first person linear narrative adventure game, is not mechanics heavy or mechanics focused, but we should sort of talk about some of that stuff as well. And I want to start by saying that I don't think this game started very strong. I did think it got better as it went along, but my first impressions of the story weren't great. This game begins with a sequence where you are playing as this guy. I believe his name is David. Hope I got that right. Who
David Miller, I believe.
Thank you. Who the first, it begins with like some title cards telling you like, the space race never ended. It started in the 60s. The year is 1999. We have a, spaceships flitting around the solar system, whatever it said. I don't remember the specifics, but that kind of title cards. And then we get an excellent scene of someone walking into the world's worst apartment, checking their email and going to sleep. And I can't say I liked that scene much. And all of everything we learn during that scene gets re-explained to us in dialogue, like within the first 10 minutes on the space station.
Multiple times, frankly. You basically learn that you don't have any money, and so you're taking a job in space because that's
what a mysterious backstory. He doesn't have money. He took a job, shitty job.
And then multiple times early on, they ask you, so why are you here in space? And you're like, I need money. It's like, that pretty much accomplished everything we learned in that opening scene, was just saying, I need money.
I don't remember establishing any kind of stakes for why he needs money. Like, apart from just, there's a
debt collector who bangs on his door and, through a locked door. There's a lot of talking to people through locked doors and over radios. This is sort of like par for the course in this genre. Like, there's a reason that is the way you do things in one of these. It's much easier to make a pretty environment to walk around. It's much, much harder to be able to make a game in which you interact in real time with a fully animated human.
Yeah, it's like well, we mentioned at the beginning. There's a lot of overlap with Firewatch. It's often even more impactful too to not see the
right.
people.
And Firewatch like cracked that nut like that. When we played Firewatch, I remember thinking like, this is brilliant. They've come up with a way to have fully voiced, really human conversations throughout this entire game and not have to spend $1 billion on facial animations and having a weird NPC
that no matter what are gonna break the immersion.
Exactly. There's no way.
And then that was followed by Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, where they had so many people that were simply represented by like floating points of light, and the whole genre. I think there's a reason we're talking about a lot of when we talk about the best games in this genre, we talk primarily about games from the 2010s, and it has kind of fallen off because it is really this is the perfect genre if your premise works for telling an interesting personal story that has no people in it at all. But that's a very
talking
tiny
exclusively
sliver of narrative
over radio or through locked doors.
Yeah. Or to no one, gone home, where you're just talking to yourself.
And that's a really tricky thing to do. And this game manages it somewhat. This game has it has an interesting story to tell. It has I wouldn't say it's like a super revolutionary sci-fi narrative, but like we're going to have a spoiler break at the end where we talk more specifics. I'm going to try to talk around the things that get revealed in sort of the first act or the end of the first act. It's not actually specifically divided into acts. I'm sort of, whatever, you know what I mean? But like it's a sci-fi story about someone coming to this boring dead-end job and finding that something isn't right here. Something is weird on Titan Station. Now, one of the weird things on Titan Station is there's no people around, conveniently, except for one guy who only talks to you over the radio and another woman who also only talks to you over a different radio.
Yeah.
But there's a sort of a mystery inherent.
Big innovation for this genre is to give you two radios.
There's two
That's
radios.
a brilliant innovation.
It is.
Yes.
I do want to call out Raygan. It's not a dead end job because I think they make a big point where they say, if you get through this job, you earn enough wealth to never have to work again. So
I don't remember saying that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think
not a dead end job exactly, but certainly a shit job.
I think it's
isolated for years in a space station.
I think a modern equivalent would be like an oil rig person,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So without getting into the spoiler territory, like what you're going to be doing through most of this is speaking to a small cast of mysterious, faceless people on the radio and wondering about their motivations as they give you sometimes conflicting instructions on what you should be doing. And when someone says, hey, I need you to go to the data center and get in there and fix or reconnect the computers to the network or what have you, you're going around this space station, sort of, gopher style, taking care of these tasks. And as you do that, you're continuing to find new clues to explain what is going on Titan Station. What is this weird situation that you're finding yourself in where most of the crew seems to be gone and, nothing seems quite right. And overall, I would say the story is pretty good. I didn't really think the dialogue worked for me very well. And I'm not really this is the kind of thing where it's like you kind of know it when you hear it. Something about it didn't really work for me. It's hard for me to put my finger on. It's easier to explain. Like I kind of was like, I almost bounced off that first scene where an unseen debt collector is banging on your door and just like nothing about it felt like a normal human interaction.
So I think that from a writing standpoint, the writer had moments they wanted you to experience and then basically built a script to get to those key moments that are in a lot of very tropey,
it's hard it's hard to you can't we don't know what was in Joakim Larsen's head while he was working on this or anything, but like it's just overall it kind of felt like like this needed, like, this is a team of one. This guy's obviously an incredibly talented 3D artist. And he had an interesting story he wants to tell here. And overall, I played to the end of this game. I finished it, and I enjoyed the story overall. But really, like, the dialogue never stopped feeling off to me in ways that were hard to explain. So I feel like it's like this needed a second team member, a writer, basically. Like it was
Yeah.
like it's like the story and the writing and the characters are like 80% of the way there, but like this it needed a little bit of something. I liked there's sort of three main characters, I guess four, but there's the main character, David. He's just sort of like, he's sort of a whatever, right? Guy wants to escape his terrible apartment and bad debts but like, there's the woman, Veronica or Victoria.
Veronica.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She came off as like continually charming, but holding back secrets. And that was a vibe that I thought worked. Like, I thought she was interesting. But overall, the characters kind of fell flat for me.
Yeah.
And it was like there was enough going on in the story to keep me moving from beat to beat, but it was not its strength.
There was,
which is tough in a game that's supposed to be a narrative adventure game, right?
Yeah, I think the vibe pushed it forward. There was a consistent sense of uneasiness that I think was successful, but I don't think that necessarily came from the writing as far as the dialogue goes. It was more about like set and setting and just the general desire to figure out what the hell's going on here. But I felt the same way. It felt very tropey, like lots of cliches and things like that are good at moving the story forward, but not really how people typically actually talk. And there was another thing that happened. You say David is kind of like a whatever, and it's true. Like, you really don't know anything about David. But really, what really cracked me up, and I hadn't really experienced this in a video game as much, and I don't know if this was intentional or not. But David works at a pace that is truly incredible. And when you're watching a horror movie, and you're like, no, don't do that. Don't go there. Why are you going in there? Like, I've never felt that disconnect in a video game where I'm the one controlling the character, being like, no, I shouldn't be going in here yet. Like, I really need to slow down. I really need to investigate more. But Veronica's telling me to go this way, or Jack's telling me to go this way. I'm just gonna go and do it because
a small example of that would be very early on when Jack starts telling you to do random stuff. Like, you've just arrived, you haven't even like put your theoretical like suitcase down yet, and he's already telling you to go do random stuff. And like, I don't know, man. I'm calling HR at this point. Like, I'm alone on this space station. No one's even here. Like,
the things they're asking you to do, you're like, I shouldn't be doing this. Like, and I do think part of that is intentional for the broader story. So, we're going to do spoiler breaks later, but like, still just like the pace at which David is like catches on to something is happening, and I've got to solve this mystery and get to the bottom of it. You've been on the space station for like 20 minutes and you're embroiled in a deep
like, and I mean, I also get it. Like, this is a maximum like 5-hour game, and it's trying to move the story along at a clip.
And our whole thing is short games and all that. But it just felt like buddy, like,
he also just accepts, like, this is something I have to talk around because there's a spoiler almost inherent in this, but he just like accepts like revelations, weird revelations, like almost without question. There's a couple moments where he discovers something dark is going on in the station, and he has a moment of, oh God, what's going on? But there's other moments of revelation a little later in the story where he just like learns something truly shattering about his own existence, and it almost felt like it went uncommented on. He just sort of like oh, really? Okay.
Let's go.
But
where do
like,
where do I need to go next?
not that I'm saying that I think the game would have necessarily benefited with 2 hours of the voice actor going, "What does this mean?" or anything, but like it did have
Maybe 1 hour.
weird vibe.
Yeah, there's a pace to it, and the dialogue doesn't help it. That just like that it makes you feel like I don't know. I wish we were being better at describing this.
Yeah,
because I do think you should. I think we're ultimately saying you should check this game out. So
yes, ultimately, I do think this is worth playing.
You know,
for sure.
so you can figure this out on your own. Maybe someone out there can explain it better than we can.
It is a lot of fun.
Yeah, but
yeah,
and
it just and we're being I suppose like this is tricky. Like I play like I played like practically every like thing with a walking simulator tag on Steam, right? Like I play a lot of these, and this is like 7 out of 10. Like it's higher than average. It's like it's good. But it's also like these kinds of stories are really hard to do and hard to make natural because it's inherently unnatural for somebody to spend 5 hours walking around completely alone, completing a series of increasingly complicated tasks, right? Like it's hard to build a story
putting in shitty password after shitty password after shitty password.
So it's hard to do. It's hard to make that naturalistic but like it feels a little bit at odds with like this is the most naturalistic looking space station I've ever walked around. So maybe this would have like maybe this sort of vibe would have felt different if it was like we're talking about like cartoonish graphics or something. You don't question people's motivations in that sort of scenario. So it's tricky. I would say like we'll do again. We're doing a spoiler break at the end. This is a story where there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. So even stuff that I had issues with at the beginning of the game, things like the fact that he has this, this extended, banal, trapped in a gray box apartment sequence at the beginning, has on some level an explanation that comes up later. I don't think it fully explained that. Like I don't think it fully said like, oh wow, now what a payoff to that slightly boring intro, but like it did at least sort of explain a bit about why it was so bleak. And it's a good payoff. And ultimately I think it's a good story. It's like there's a lot of weirdness to it where you could in any moment think like, wow, this is weirdly presented. So I'm sorry again. I'm not doing the best job of explaining my feelings here. But overall, I can like Sorry.
If I can bring another thing that like I kind of liked this about it, but it just made me laugh a lot, and I've already mentioned it a little bit. But these games, the writers and the creators have to come up with something for you to do with your hands, basically, right? They need you to be interacting with the world in some way, right? And they need to put up like false barriers, something to like have you do something in the game. So it's not literally just walking on rails, right? So with Firewatch, you had to like go in and check the little caches, or like, oh, there's smoke over there, so I gotta go look at it, right? Like there's a lot of, you're looking at a map and you're trying to find these locations. Like those are the things that you're doing with your hands, but they're really just to make it feel more like a game.
Reasons to have you walk back and forth across the environment.
And this one, it's that like everything is blocked by a password. And so you have to find the password for whatever it might be. It might be a computer, it might be a door. It's usually one of those two things, but there's various iterations of it. And so you're walking around trying to find like, where's this little piece of paper that someone probably wrote their password down on, or where's their like little tablet, that looks like a Etch-a-Sketch style like tablet,
Yeah,
These
this
guys
game's
sure
version
do
of
love
a
their
puzzle
Kindles.
is like an office with 10 computers in it, and everyone has emailed their password to somebody.
Yeah,
And,
so you gotta find the password,
and you figure out which computers to. And that's making me sound a little worse than it is. That was a 5-minute.
It's
maybe
fine. It's
sequence.
fine.
It's
This
fine.
isn't even a criticism. It cracked me up. The amount that you're like going around finding people's passwords, and 99% of the time the password is like pizza, Buffy,
Yeah,
dog.
I mean, hey, it was 1999. All our passwords were like that.
Yeah.
Can you remember what was your password in 1999?
I actually was talking to someone about this the other day. No joke. For a long time, my password to Amazon, the like core, commerce of the internet, was cheese.
I went to a middle school, an elementary and middle school. They got a huge grant of money and computers from Compaq Computers back in the 90s. And so every room we're talking about I was in middle school, like we're talking about the 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
But they had a full
not early 2000s, Raygan. It was,
no, you're right. Full on just 90s, right? Yeah.
By 2000, by Y2K, we were already in high school.
Yeah, I guess you're right. The entire school was networked, and they gave everybody email accounts in like the 90s in middle school. Like that was really weird at the time. They also assigned everyone a password. And my password was 2 letters and 4 numbers, and I used that same password from middle school for everything until I was like 25.
Yeah.
I was pretty bad.
We're better now.
We are. I use a password manager now.
Yeah, my password is only cheese for my bank and stuff like that, but I got it off of Amazon.
I would tell you the password that I used back then, but I still use it.
You notice that I did not actually say what that password was, and it's because I'm pretty sure there are some places.
Yeah,
where
you still have some iteration. You have some iterations of it out there too.
But yeah, that was all a little bit silly in this, but like I don't hate that. I think that design is fine. The idea of scrounging for passwords in an office, like what are you doing in like half of all the immersive sims in the world? You're scrounging around in various spaces looking for sticky notes where someone wrote a password down in order to unlock some lore and find another password for another computer. That's totally fine. I'm not complaining about that aspect of this game.
It just made me laugh. It's just like
it is very funny.
Damn it! I gotta find another password. Okay,
I did say that was like what this game does for puzzles. That's not entirely true. This game also has a kind of a mini game puzzle thing that it does occasionally that I can't explain the context of very much without also getting into spoiler territory. But it is in some of the screenshots on Steam, so I don't think it's a spoiler to explain that sometimes it drops you into these sort of virtual environments, and you have to do some pretty basic but kind of interesting little block connecting puzzles where you use sort of Minecraft style clicks to build little snakes of blocks that would connect to different things and create different numerical, it's like addition. So like you have like a block that says 100 on it and a block that says 1 and a spot on the wall that says 101. And obviously you need to kind of connect those 2 or 3. So that kind of thing. And that actually was I like that aspect of it. Though it didn't overstay its welcome. It was a simple, reasonable little puzzle that it threw at you only occasionally, and it did continue to build on itself. And so like puzzle wise, I give this game like a pretty good thumbs up. Like I don't go to these kinds of games for really challenging puzzles. I'm just looking for something to do with my hands while I'm interacting with the story.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Check.
You don't want it to be something that you're spending a lot of time on. In fact, I got lost briefly because I couldn't find a stupid little tablet. Not on the games. This isn't a games all. It's just my own inability to be good at these types of games.
That is one problem with this kind of game is like, if you miss some small environmental detail that's like the beginning of a cascade of clues, it can be tricky. Like you can end up, I had a similar situation where I was playing through, there's a sequence where like the objective is something like reconnect data centers to the network or something like that. And I got to that objective and I quit for the day, and I came back to it the next day, and I realized I had forgotten that. So there's in those areas, there's both these computers that are like terminals that somebody would theoretically be using to, I don't know, check their 1999 email. But there's also these separate computers that are there for actually controlling the data center things.
Well, obviously you need a different computer to get the message that says turn on the other computer.
Right. And so I thought I had soft locked the game. I thought I'd screwed something up so badly that I couldn't progress. And I spent like a good hour trying to figure out what was going on. And I realized eventually that I was just mixing up which computers were which. Like I was using the wrong one. I was like, it says connect the thing to the network, and I'm going into the computer and it's connected to the network already. What's wrong? And I was just being an idiot. So like it's definitely possible to get screwed up on games like this, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not
those
bad.
puzzles were okay. I like the environment a lot for those puzzles, and I like the they're certainly not difficult. They're pretty straightforward. I do think that the area that you're in for that really feels a little copy paste. Like you're going around to these different server like rooms that are.
I mean, I don't know if it's that.
It makes sense.
Like computers only look one way in this world,
Yeah.
and they didn't all even have the same layout. Like I kind of disagree with you there. Like if anything, this every area in this does have kind of like a there's templates, but like there's a whole ass game, one dude, right?
I mean, I don't think we don't consider this a spoiler, I think, based on, but once you get through that area you get a bit of a shock, which was so
one of my favorite moments in the game.
So I forget you're moving on to the next area after activating the computers, and you go into this office and holy shit, there's a person there. Are there people in this game? Have they finally cracked the code on the walking simulator? Am I about to talk to someone? No, it's a corpse, and
that's a pretty big spoiler. I don't know if were we intending on actually sharing that you're finding a dead body.
I mean, finding a dead body is like the
pretty
first
sweet
clue in finding out what
clue.
I would consider
That's
spoilers.
a clue.
So fair enough, Nate. But also, I think it's probably okay. We're 45 minutes deep in this episode. We're probably okay. Talking about the fact that you find a corpse sometime in the first hour.
It's still in the first third of the game, probably, right?
Yeah.
I had then if we're gonna talk about the dead body, then I had a funny moment too where I found the dead body and it's like, oh my God. And then I didn't notice, and this is just me. I'm bad at these games. I didn't notice that like the dead body had a tablet in its hands, and there was like a series of tasks that you had to do like in and around the dead body. And I was still able to do several of those tasks. And I'm like, I found this dead body. He's freaking out. Now I'm going and replacing a coolant tube. Like this is very anticlimactic. And then I realized like, oh shit, I just needed to click on the thing in the dead person's lap and it moved the story forward. And then I was supposed to go and do the coolant tube and whatnot. But it felt very strange to me for a minute.
This is just sort of one of the difficult things about design for this kind of narrative game. There's in just by the nature of being a video game, like the plot is essentially made up of like, flags that you hit with your actions that unlock the next step in a sequence of flags. And that is very natural in games, but not very natural in terms of life. And sometimes, that when in a game that's like so first person narrative, just focused on telling a story, it can feel very unnatural when you hit one of those moments where there's like, something doesn't quite seem right about the way the flags are getting tripped. I didn't pick up the right object, and so somebody isn't telling me what to do next, that kind of thing.
I had exactly that right at the beginning of the game, because your first sort of quest is to activate 5 computers, and you find out, and it's keeping a tag on the screen. How many of you activated? You've activated 1 of 5. You've activated 2 of 5. And one of the doors is locked. And so you're told, okay, you can skip that door. And then I went and activated 3 of 5, and the after I did 3 of 5, the voiceover is like, okay, thanks for doing all of the doors except for that one, but that's okay. You've done them all. So, all right, here's what I need you to do next. And it still said 3 of 5 at the top. Super confusing. And it moved on to the next quest. And I was walking back and I realized that I'd walked past a door because I'm bad at these games, and it still let me go in and do all of the stuff that I would have had to have done in that room, like activating the computer. I got all the dialogue, I got all the stuff, but it was like I think I could have just not done it because I'd already like triggered the end of that quest, if that makes sense. So the game expected me to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I went like 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, and it like confused it,
That kind of thing must be very hard for this kind of game, because it's not like there was a door, that you have to like pass through in order to get to like 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
I
didn't.
And those are the kind of things where like even if it's like a minor thing, you start seeing the seams a little bit. And in a game like this, like you notice. I mean, I played enough of these where like I don't judge a game for that kind of thing. I'm like, I am the one who am wrong. But I could see somebody being frustrated in a moment like that where something doesn't quite make sense because narratively what I'm doing makes sense, but maybe according to the like intended path and what flags I've tripped in the game, it doesn't.
The good thing is it didn't seem to impact my play other than the moment of confusion when it said you're done. And I'm like, no, I'm not, but I was able to still do everything and whatnot. And I think I was able to pretty quickly figure out like what had happened. But yeah, I don't know. Open world is hard to develop, right? This isn't exactly open world, but like these little chunks are like open world moments. So
totally. So I think without getting into spoilers, that's about all I have to say about Titan Station. So what we'll talk spoiler stuff here in a moment. But before we do, in case you are avoiding spoilers and are hopping off here, thank you for joining us on this episode. Titan Station, again, is a game for PCs. It's on Steam. I believe it's also on GOG. And some things I saw seem to indicate it was also it might be planning to come to consoles like maybe the PS5 or something. But I don't know what the story is there. I believe this is currently just on PC. I would definitely recommend this game for anybody who's a fan of the genre of quote unquote walking sims. I don't think this necessarily would be like my first recommendation to somebody, somebody's first walking sim. But if you're into these kinds of games, as I am, I think this is a totally worth playing one of those. It's got an interesting story that kept me going through it took me about 5 hours to play. And again, we spent the first 25 minutes of this episode just praising the visuals. This game is an absolute treat for visuals. It looks awesome. I just love the way this game looks. So really worth playing for that reason alone.
I'll just, if I can throw in, I'll say the more and more we get into the genre, the less and less I think that I'm actually a big fan of this genre. And with that said, I enjoyed playing this game. So I would still recommend it.
And I am a big fan of this genre. Like, you make a game where you're walking around and talking to somebody on a radio, and I'll play that thing, man. That's my zone. This is $15 on Steam. I assume it's the same everywhere, and I would recommend you check it out. And I think I already mentioned about 5 hours is what it took me. I think you could probably, if you did a little less getting stuck in the middle. I had a good hour where I was wandering around trying to figure out something that turned out to be my boneheaded oversight of something, some vital moment. So probably I would say like a 4 hour game is more likely. And I even saw some people reporting like 2 to 3. But it depends on how you are with these. So totally recommend checking it out. And let's see. This is we're about to go to spoiler break. So thank you for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find our show on the internet at www.theshortgame.net or our cool jumping off page, shortgame.fm.
Wow.
On shortgame.fm, you'll find all the links that you need to find and contact any of them.
Your many precious links.
You can find everybody's Mastodons and Twitters. You can find a link to, obviously, the website. You can find a link to our Patreon. All of our patrons, even just $1 a month, get instant access to We Will Talk About Your Game on the Podcast. Excuse me. That's not true. You can absolutely, if you listen, okay, if you are a patron of the show and you make a whole ass video game, I will 100% play it. I will not guarantee anyone that I will talk about their game on the podcast. You don't just get that with paying me $5 or whatever. But I swear to God, if you are a video game developer and you want me to play your game, I promise I will.
It's the most direct way. Let's be honest.
Exactly. But also,
every time it works, the price goes up.
Yes. And sometimes it's a Titan Station where I don't play your game for months and months and months, and then we featured on the podcast. Sometimes it's a combo postage where I become obsessed with your game and play it for dozens of hours over the course of 2 years.
And yet never officially cover it.
I never officially cover it on the podcast. Sorry, man.
The Slothworks games. I think we were into his games before he joined us, though.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, Grummet's Tale.
Oh man,
yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah, so join our Patreon, I guess. Thank you for supporting us. It's been a good year for the Patreon, and we're putting those funds to good use. We really appreciate it.
You know what I want to say to our patrons?
What do you want to say to our patrons, Shane?
Thanks, patrons. Patrons.
Is that a Scientology thing? And I'm out of stuff to say. So I guess we're going to go to our spoiler break. Here it is, your spoiler break. This doesn't have to be long. I just want to say that I think this game, like, it's a game about our AI's people, basically, and I think it was a decent one of those. And I will say that I was not expecting that the main character was an AI, but it explained a lot about the kind of weird beginning of the game,
which felt like it was written by an AI.
That's what that's where I'm like, is all of it intentional?
No,
I don't think so. I don't think
either.
I don't think you can hand away like that'd be nice if it turns out.
Like the idea that that most of what you see about this main character's life before the game is this like incredibly tiny apartment, and it explains that they gave him this shitty backstory in order to act as a motivation. A big problem with AIs is they need to motivate them, so they give them the backstory of their their life before coming to the station, and it's all pretty bad. And so they're like, "Wow, what a great job I have here on Death Station Alpha," and like that scans. It's fine. The thing that I did like about this was that there were moments between the various AI characters. All the speaking characters in this are AIs, with maybe, I guess, what's her name, like Angela or something. I think she's not. But Victoria is
Veronica.
I keep mixing that up. Sorry. Veronica is an AI, and so is the guy John or whatever that keeps yelling at you through the walls.
It's Jack. You're so close.
I'm really bad at this, guys. Its conclusion was decent, although not like especially like deep. It was, these AIs now have to figure out how to go on with their existence now that they know that they're living in a simulation and so on. I think I would have liked a little bit more. I think those revelations, I think, actually could have come earlier in the game. I think I would have liked more of the AIs trying to figure out what is our existence actually going to be now that we all know that we're living in a simulation. And I was reminded a little bit of Thomas Was Alone with some of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think this is like a B+ story in like A+++++ visual presentation. And I don't know. I enjoyed it, but I was left kind of like, for most of it.
It's so close. I think
Mhm.
good sci-fi asks a good question, right? Like it boils down to a good question. And I think the question on this game is pretty good. And so you've got a good core and you've got a good...
Is that question, what if you owed money in space?
Yeah, obviously that's the question. That would suck. Like owing money sucks, and owing money in space would be even worse. So
does
it's a
owing
good
money suck more in a vacuum?
Finally someone asks the good question. So I think this game has all the ingredients, for a good pie here. There's just a little something that's off, and I do think even if it's intentional that the writing is a little staggered and a little tropey, I think we need to have been informed more directly that was intentional.
It has moments where it really did work. It has a lot of dialogue choices that don't add up to much, and it has a lot of but like overall, like it has moments that work. That there, I think of some moments between the main character and Veronica, where they were talking about like there's a moment where she's living in one of the computers on the space station, right? And she's been cut off from the network. And part of what you do as when you're essentially kind of like breaking out is you go and enter her computer world and kind of bring her out with you in your body so that you can escape. And there's a moment late in the game where they think that they're doomed, and she's saying, that she realizes that when they left the computer that she was on, they actually left copies of themselves behind. And even though they're doomed, they take some comfort in the idea that there's another copy of them out there that is continuing to live in a world that was at least tolerable. And I thought that was a great moment. And there's like little moments like that, like this idea of like, what is it to be a consciousness that can be copied or altered, that kind of stuff that landed pretty well.
I think that's what I was talking about earlier when I was saying like the writer or Joakim, when they were writing like what the pieces that they wanted to write, those big moments, those big set pieces, those big reveals or whatever, it's good. And like that set piece, what Shane was talking about, when you first find the dead body, like it's good. Like that was shocking and fun. But it's all the stuff that's like in between those key moments where you can tell that like this is what this game is here to do, is where it felt like it needed another coat of polish, something to just get you in between these core moments a little bit better, so that they all connect.
Yeah, and this is something you hear from like narrative, like from writers on games, is that like some of the hardest stuff is the little stuff that you don't think about, like quest givers telling you what to do next, barks in the background of characters making words that might potentially be played anywhere, like these little, like the connective tissue and sort of background of games writing. That's really hard to do. And this game, it, like, I agree. I think like some of those thematic moments work pretty well. But some of the like connective tissue, those moments of like, talking through a door to an angry boss who tells you need to go turn the computers back on, like it just felt off. I think it takes a special kind of writing to turn those like really mundane moments into something that like feels naturalistic and also like maybe compelling. So really at least an interesting enough story that I was engaged through the whole thing.
Totally. Yeah.
So thanks again. If you stuck around for the spoiler break, let us know what you thought of the story. Write to us. And you can find us on all the places I mentioned earlier. I'd like to hear people's thoughts on the game if you check it out. Also, we've just been talking behind the scenes. We got some really nice positive responses from our last episode that was sort of a more loose topic oriented kind of thing. And we are talking about changing up our schedule to make that a recurring thing, maybe once a month or so. Not specifically that topic, but sort of a more loose, non-game specific sort of thing. And so if you have topics that you think would be a good fit for that style of episode, if you enjoyed that episode and you say, I really want to hear Raygan and Nate talk about pizza. Why did we just both think of pizza? Exactly. When I think of Nate, I think of pizza, as we all know. If you have a thought like that, maybe not specifically pizza, let us know, because I would love to start, banking a few of those ideas and make that part of our rotation. So thanks very much for all the listeners who told us that was something that you wanted. Awesome. And thanks once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.